Hey everyone, happy Feast of St. Augustine. So it's kind of fitting that today is the Feast of St. Augustine of Hippo, um, since he's the son of St. Monica, whose feast day we celebrated yesterday. Um, so just a little bit about St. Augustine. I think a lot of people, he's one of the more well-known saints, but he was born in 354, he died in 430, so he was 75 years old. Um, and as I think most people probably know, um, he spent a lot of his early life not Christian. He wasn't baptized until 386, so he was 32 when he was baptized. Now, as I said yesterday, his mom did try. So Saint Monica did try to baptize him when he was young, because he'd gotten sick, but his father, basically wouldn't let him be baptized. So basically, he went to Carthage to study when he was 17, and that's where he picked up a lot of his vices. To include, he started living with a mistress that he lived with for actually 15 years, a young Carthaginian woman, and they had a son together. They weren't married, but they had a son together. And he only lived to be 16, so he lived from 372 to 388. Which is interesting because, so then you look and you say, okay, he was baptized in 386, and then he wasn't ordained until 391. So, anyways, I just think it's interesting. But so in the 380s is when he kind of really started realizing, that his life was not what it ought to be. I mean, he really started feeling the pull of Christ in his heart, and he moved back to Italy from Carthage, and that's when he met St. Ambrose. And in addition to St. Monica, St. Ambrose is credited a lot with the conversion of St. Augustine. So he was ordained in 391, and just to back up a second, so before he became Christian, St. Augustine kind of loosely followed one of the heresies called Manichaeism, which was founded by Mani, who was Iranian, from Persia at the time. It is a sect of Gnosticism, and without going a whole lot into the theology, if you will, or the error of Manichaeism, basically they denied the omnipotence of God. So essentially, if you were Manichaeist, you would have believed that Satan and God were essentially co-equals, and they were in this cosmic power struggle. And that's a very watered-down version of that's essentially what they believe. So St. Augustine was kind of very loosely followed them, but he wasn't considered to be, very high up in the food chain as far as Manichaeism is concerned. But then he also became a huge force against Manichaeism once he became Christian. He wrote a lot of homilies, a lot of sermons, but he's best known for City of God and for Confessions. Incidentally, he wrote City of God after the Visigoths sacked Rome in 410, which is kind of an interesting little side note of history of like what was going on at the time. So, if you think about like during St. Augustine's time, the Roman Empire is crumbling, the Visigoths sacked Rome. So there's a lot of historical turmoil going on, in addition to the turmoil that he kind of felt in his own heart. So that's kind of just down, a little bit about him, very brief. He's the patron saint of brewers, which I didn't know. So I say one of the patron saint of brewers. There's also St. Arnold. St. Arnold's also the patron of hop pickers, so for you hop pickers out there. But I think what's interesting to me, what I love about St. Augustine, is the fact that he was so flawed for so long. And to me, it's encouraging, because it's like every time, we sin, every time we fall, and I talked about this yesterday with St. Monica, in so many ways we're like St. Augustine in our own personal lives. I mean, obviously, we're not necessarily keeping a mistress. I hope nobody's keeping a mistress, but we have these, so many flaws. We're flawed human beings, and just as Christ, loved St. Augustine, forgave him of his sins, and embraced him back into the church with open arms, so he does that with us. And it's really kind of a beautiful thing when you think about the fact that Augustine spent 15 years living out of wedlock, and yet he became one of the greatest confessors of the Catholic Church. So think about that. Think about the power of prayer, the power of St. Monica praying for him every single day for years and years and years that he would convert to Christianity. And then, he meets St. Ambrose, and he converts to Christianity, and he becomes, he's ordained a priest, and he becomes one of the greatest theologians of the church. And you think about the fact that this was in the 380s, in the 390s, in the 400s. This was a long time ago, and yet we're still reading his stuff today. His theology, his writings still resound with us even now. That's how powerful prayer is. And that's how powerful Christ is. So never underestimate how powerful prayer is. Something that I've kind of been trying to get a lot better at is, when you tell people, hey, I'm going to pray for you, do you actually do it? I'm so bad about forgetting to, and that's something that I'm working on. I'm trying to find ways, even if it's a Hail Mary or, somebody suggested, for those of you who say Liturgy of the Hours, you can offer your Liturgy of the Hours for someone, but don't underestimate how powerful prayer can be. So that's just a little bit of something about St. Augustine. For those of you who are like me are flawed, take hope, because St. Augustine was very flawed, and he became one of the greatest theologians of the church, and he became a saint. So I hope you enjoy this. God bless you all, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.